Final Fantasy. One of, if not the biggest, most beloved JRPG franchises in the world. Many people, including myself, hold this as their favourite franchise in media history. And 35 years ago today, the original Final Fantasy released on the original Nintendo to change the JRPG landscape forever. There have been many games, from mainline numbered titles to spin-offs, sequels, prequels, remakes, remasters, movies, animated shorts, merchandise, and so much more. It's a franchise that has been compelling and sucking people in with its amazing worlds, characters, and stories for the last 35 years, with no sign of stopping anytime soon. And today, in honour of its anniversary, I'm going to rank every one of the main entries from worst to best. Or at least my least favourite to my favourite. There's no worst here. I at least like every entry. So, let's begin. But quickly before that, a few rules and guidelines. 1. Main number titles only. That means even as great as they might be, no sequels, prequels, remakes or spin-off games such as the Final Fantasy VII Remake, Crisis Core, Dissidia, or Final Fantasy X-2 for example. 2. Every mainline game is included except for 11 because it's an online game from the PS2 generation that I never played, and honestly I have little desire to get myself into any MMO like that anytime soon. So it's going to be Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14 and 15. 3. Small warning, I will try not to spoil any late game story stuff, but I may allude to how the final boss is for example, or certain boss fights, things like that. Honestly, if you haven't played them, I recommend being careful. But I will leave timestamps on the screen if I'm competent enough. If not, they will be in the description. I won't spoil which games they are, I will just name the number of the entry. And 4, the way I talk about some of the earlier entries, chronologically speaking, might be a bit different from how I speak about the future games. I had to play through some of the older ones, or replay some of the older ones, for this video, and I took significant notes. I did not have to play through certain games again like 7, because I am much more intimately familiar, so it's going to be a bit different how I express my feelings on them. And lastly, and hopefully obviously, this is all based entirely off my subjective, biased and personal opinion. Basing it on such things as story and characters, which is the most important to me, but also things like combat, world design, music, minigames, and of course just plain old nostalgia. Childhood favourites or games that impacted and touched you hard are hard to shrug off and look at with 100% objectivity. I was planning to go over my history of what I played, etc, but I think I'll just explain that as I get to the specific entry. Anyway, we have 35 years of gaming history to get through, so one last time, here are all the Final Fantasy mainline titles, except 11, from worst to best. Happy birthday, buddy. Number 14. I think there are 2 significantly controversial placements on any list. The number 1 entry, and of course, the bottom. People take it a lot more personally if their favourite is at the bottom. It's part of the reason I hope to put 3 here. Nobody cares about Final Fantasy 3. But I pretty much always knew that the bottom entry would have to go to Final Fantasy 12. Final Fantasy 12 is a game I've tried as hard as I could to get into many times ever since I first played it. But it's definitely the closest entry to me not liking. Not disliking, just not having any strong like for. I can't even really talk much about the story because it's never drawn me in. But a lot of it revolves around the main party trying to stop the Empire from using a super powerful stone called Nethicite to expand their power and their empire. You start off after a brief tutorial as a different character, as Vaughn. Probably the least liked main Final Fantasy character, and I can see why. I don't hate him or anything, but as most people seem to agree, he's just a bit bland. Thankfully there are some other characters who help out quite a bit, and these are a lot more interesting and compelling. his childhood friend Penelo, who I like a lot. The Bonnie Girl character Fran is pretty awesome. The fan favourite Captain Bosch von Ronsenberg of Dalmasca.
I'm Captain Bosch von Ronsenberg of Dalmasca.
Which definitely didn't take me 10 takes to get right. Ash, the former princess of Dalmasca, who a lot of fans consider to be the true main character of this game. And of course, the most well-known of the Final Fantasy characters in this game, the wise-ass Balthier, who is clearly loved by everybody. And while Vaughn is average at best, most of the party he travels with are pretty great, so it can easily make up for it. This is the first Final Fantasy game to stray from your typical turn-based combat, playing more like a single-player MMO. While it's still heavily turn-based, you move around on the field, characters are heavily AI controlled, but they are customized based on gambits, such as having them automatically attack enemies who are the closest or who have the highest HP, or using Cure if your HP drops below a certain percentage, so it's massively customizable and personal to what you want. You can even control them manually if you see fit, whether it be 100% of the time, or just whenever you want to have them do a certain action. So in that regard, you can really change it up to match your playstyle. Whenever I get the itch to play this game, it's because of the combat. It can be really fun and addicting. And like an MMO, the boss battles are pretty great experiences. Which brings me on to my absolute favourite thing about this game, the marks or hunts. These are boss battles that you take on as a bounty and unlock as you play or do more of them. Some are small, some are big, and some are absolute monsters to fight. These are by far my favourite aspect and unique part of this game. They're completely optional for the majority, so it's a great side or post-game content, and many will really test you and your limits. And of course, one of the most famous super bosses that take forever in this game called Yasmat, I have no idea how to pronounce it, who is well known for his 50 million HP. Other than that, you level up like normal games and gain stats, but you also gain LP or license points for every kill, which lets you unlock new power-ups and lets you equip new weapons or armor, or unlock special moves called quickenings and other things to make you more powerful, which I like a lot, as we'll talk about later on in this list. I'm a big fan of having alternate ways to level up as well, especially alongside regular leveling up. It really just adds a ton to the game for me. And I do appreciate having to buy magic again to use. It really is a neat little throwback to the very early Final Fantasy titles that I kind of miss. And I think one of my biggest faults with this game is that it doesn't have any really memorable music for me. The opening song is great and all, but it's not a new one, even if it might be a remix. I think every other entry has at least one standout track, if not a bunch. And I know this is a very beloved game, and in a lot of ways I can easily see why. Out of all the games here, it's quite possibly the one that people are the most passionate about when they do love it. And like I said, it can be very addicting even for me, when I get into a nice rhythm of just fighting my way through a place. But for me, I don't know if it will ever climb this particular ladder, despite my many attempts throughout the years.
You could destroy all of Iblis, if you wished it.
Princess, you have been chosen. Take revenge against those who stole your kingdom. Fulfill your role as savior.
Destroy them all. The Empire?
Number 13. Final Fantasy VI. I hope this won't be an overly contentious entry, because Final Fantasy VI is easily a contender for the absolute fan favourite and most highly acclaimed game in the entire franchise. And it is definitely easy to see why. This game definitely helped to make the series what it is. It was a leap in storytelling like pretty much no other. And in many aspects it is a monumental leap for the franchise that cannot be ignored. And some of the most beloved and iconic moments, characters, and of course villain are from this game. And I really wanted to love it more. And honestly, for the majority of this game, I thought I would. But before we get into the story and the positives, a little history. I played this all the way through just a few weeks ago for the first time. I played it roughly half of it many years ago, but my save file got lost and I never went back until recently. I didn't remember much from then other than some vague flashes and a few moments. The story of this game is that 1000 years ago, the War of the Magi seemingly destroyed magic. But some want to enslave the world by reviving it. Game then opens up with 3 characters in Magitech armor, Biggs, Wedge, and our main lead, Terra, a sorceress slash magic user enslaved by a crown by the Empire. They are there to investigate an Esper that has been found alive, but when they find it emits a weird light, getting rid of her 2 controllers, and she wakes up with amnesia. This was before it was as much of a trope in JRPGs. There she meets up with Locke, a member of a resistance, who brings her along to join them, learn more about her power, and to help stop the Empire, led by Emperor Gestal, and his right-hand man, Kefka, from using her abilities to take over the world. Or worse. Of course that's just a preliminary basic start to it, but that's all I would really say about the core of the story without spoiling things. This game clearly focuses a lot on its characters, even more than any of the previous games I would say, and some of them are really great. Terra is a really cool lead that I like a lot. Locke is really cool. Characters like Edward and Celis are very welcome too. And of course, the villain of this game, Kefka, needs no introduction. I've been hearing for well over 10 years how amazing he is, how he's the best villain of the franchise. You get the idea. And did he hold up to over a decade of hype and build up? Hell yeah. This crazy bastard is absolutely amazing. Many compare him with Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII, and I can definitely see why. I think while Sephiroth is more of a controlled and calm monster, Kefka represents the chaotic madness style of a monster. He's calculated too, but definitely a lot more wild and chaotic. Like the embodiment of pure madness. It's really hard to live up to such high and long-lasting expectations, so it's definitely impressive as hell for him to do so, and is a testament to how amazing and long-lasting of a villain he was. And of course, some of the series' most well-known and iconic moments came from this game, like I said. The opening scene alone, Kefka poisoning the water in Doma, suplexing a train as one of Final Fantasy's earliest memes. And the opera scene is still remembered very fondly, and I think could easily be considered Final Fantasy's first big spectacle. And paved the way for some of the biggest, best moments that will come up in the entire series. And I just want to add really quick, if you haven't, definitely check out the overclocked remix of the opera theme. It is one of my favourite songs of all time, and I'll definitely leave a link to that in the description.
Into the sins of your past, love as if today were your last.
The battle system is your usual ATB style, where your bar fills in real time and then you can attack. Not 100% turn-based, but pretty much that, except with a bit more real time added to it. This can be changed in the menu for 100% turn-based though. It's back to a more Final Fantasy IV style, where your characters have set roles instead of job classes. But if anyone is disappointed by that, I think the characters' playstyles have more than enough variety to easily make up for it. Edgar can purchase gadget skills like poison spray or crossbow attacks. Cyan has a better sword skill based on how long you let it charge while in the ATB moves. Or Setzer having a mini slot machine to attack with. The characters play differently to each other very vastly, and that definitely makes the combat more dynamic and entertaining, especially when you find some favourites. You can even skip turns for the first time in the franchise, meaning you don't need to waste a move or do something else to use the character you actually do want to use. One unique aspect of this game is you can equip 2 relics, separate from any other equipment like your weapons or your armor, which give you varying effects such as higher HP, higher magic, moves like jump, preventing certain status effects, attacking twice, stuff like that. And espers, the summons in this game, can be equipped to anybody. You get 1 per character to let you summon them, but you also learn new magic and give stat boosts upon leveling up depending on who you equip. And then you can master these skills to keep even after removing the esper. And I really love this kind of system in games, where you have an ability linked to something and then when you master you can get rid of that and keep the ability to make way for a new one. I love that shit. Graphically, this game is a big leap even from 5, which was already beautiful, and a leap from 4. And this was only roughly 1 year and 4 months after. They are so much of a step up in every way. Even the menus look better and cleaner, and give a nice portrait of the characters again like 4 did. Character models are so much more detailed in the overworld, even seeing characters when they wag a finger at you or something. The environment looks more detailed, like grass looking like blades of grass instead of just a green background. And holy shit, some of these background screens in battles look like genuine works of art. Like if you remove the sprites and the characters and the monsters from this, I wouldn't question it if I saw it hanging in someone's house. They are seriously beautiful. And sometimes they even play around perspective a little bit, like letting you ride a chocobo in a 3D view, or one location having side-scrolling features. And the music, phenomenal, like most Final Fantasy games. The opening theme is haunting and epic. The Mobliz team is really underrated and needs more attention. And the final boss theme is not only amazing, but apparently it goes on for over 30 minutes. And as I already mentioned, the opera is probably some music that will never leave me. So clearly, a lot I love about this game. Other little cool things being a mini-map for the first time in the series, being able to switch between characters in menus, like when you're equipping you can just press R and L to switch to the next one, which is a massively appreciated quality of life improvement, and being able to see which characters will benefit from equipment while you're in the shop. And again, saves so much time and frustration. In games before this, you had to buy the weapon before you could actually see how much better it was. But with so much praise, why so low on the list? This sounds like the way someone would talk about their number 1 entry. Well, where the game really falls apart for me is the last third or so. After a certain event, which I won't mention, I think like with Final Fantasy VII, if you know what I mean, you already know what I'm talking about. And if you don't, I don't need to spoil anything. And yes, it is a really great moment. Again, lived up to all my expectations. But from the location where that happens, and from that point on, it became a frustrating, abysmal experience for me. And I hate to say that. The enemies from this point on, it was like every second one had to counter everything you do. You couldn't scratch your ass without an enemy counter-attacking you. Sometimes even with instant death moves. It was painful. The counter-attacks were just really excessive if you ask me. And a lot of the time, it was like someone forgot to tell the developers that this is a turn-based game and enemies would just attack you so many times before you could get a chance to go again. And honestly, the ATB gauge seemed bad in general. When I was like level 20, I went back to the beginning area of the game, the first wild encounters, and enemies would still attack me first. Meaning weak enemies would waste your time, and strong enemies could sometimes ruin things before you had a chance to move. And there's one location called the Fanatic's Tower, which I know is optional, but I still want to bitch about it a little bit. Basically, it's a multi-stage tower where you do basically nothing but climb about 50 sets of stairs and fight random encounters. And you can only use magic. Some of the enemies would have auto-reflect, and of course, they counter everything you do. Every enemy counters every single move. So it just becomes 50 sets of stairs of hold left, press up, hold right, press down, repeat till you're at the top. And on top of that, you can't run from most of them, so that adds to the frustration. And oh my god, the boss fight at the end is so unbelievably dumb. Why? Well, like I said, this is optional, so I did it when I was probably a bit overpowered when I finally went back to it. So a lot of it was a cakewalk on that attempt. Even the boss. So I admittedly did kind of lower my guard, but at the very end of the fight, which like I said was pretty easy, I had roughly 4,500 HP with my highest character, and right at the end, the boss uses Ultima, dealing roughly 6,000 even with shell equipped. Not near the end, literally when it dies, after the battle ends. Just as one last cheap fuck you to the player. It's so unnecessary and pointless and just bad. Fuck these bosses in any game. And as if it couldn't get worse, this is one of the few locations where you can't use warp to get to the entrance. Meaning, you guessed it, back down 50 flights of stairs to fight the same enemies you can't run from. I eventually just gave up after dying on the way back down, and I was just done. It was honestly the closest I came to just not wanting to even play the game in general. Oh, and just as one little way to make it just a little bit worse, Final Fantasy VI handles game over very different than any other. If you die, you don't have to lose your experience. You'll return to the last save point with everything else reset, but you keep your experience points. You can still just reset the game if you want to do it more traditionally, where you don't keep the experience and go back like you died. But this is the one location, as far as I could tell, in the entire game where you don't gain experience from enemies. So more than any other location, it is a complete 100% waste of time if you die. So to summarise, fuck the Fanatic's Tower, fuck the boss fight, and fuck everything about this place. So yeah, the last third or so really dragged my experience of this game down hard. If the last hours held up with the rest, this game would have easily have jumped multiple spots. But the enemies in some boss fight really killed it for me. But more than most games, especially this low down, I can easily see why people hold this game to such a high standard. And like I said, for the overwhelming majority, I was really on board with loving it too. Maybe in the future with more knowledge about this, my experience will be even better, but right now it has to be the second worst for me. Only because of the last quarter or third or so. Other than that, amazing experience. Number 12. Final Fantasy 15. Which, funny enough, this game was actually announced the same year that 12 came out. I should clarify, I wrote that when I thought 15 would be swapped with 6, and 12 and 15 would be right next to each other, so moving on. Of course, back then it was under the name Final Fantasy Versus 13, and it was possibly one of the most excited times I ever had looking forward to a game. This looked unbelievable up to and including the E3 2013 trailer. And while I like to judge games for what they are and not what they were going to be or what they could have been, it's hard to completely disconnect from the fact that most of my time knowing about this game, it was such a vastly different project. And if I'm being honest, I can't even watch old trailers for this anymore. It just makes me sad. But let's talk about the actually finished product. Or, you know, as finished as it was at release anyway. You play as Noctis, prince of a highly technologically advanced city called Insomnia, while Noctis and his closest companions are out on a road trip, headed to form an alliance marriage to the Princess of Tenebrae, Luna. His homeland is attacked during a peace treaty signing by the nation of Niflheim. His dad is dead, and it is believed that Noctis and Luna are too. And thus Noctis and his friends continue on to find Luna, stop the Empire, and avenge his fallen father. So already, story-wise, you can probably tell I'm a lot more invested here than the previous entry. Again, I thought it was going to be after 12. I'm not saying it's a great or phenomenal story, but I definitely remember and care more. Character-wise, I think they're all likeable enough. If a little obvious and archetypal, you got Gladiolus, the big muscly bodyguard, as is his family legacy. You got the wisecracking, more energetic Prompto, and, of course, Ignis, the smart glasses-wearing guy who does all of the cooking, as I'm sure nobody who played this game has ever forgotten.
That's it!
What's up, Iggy?
I've come up with a new recipe. That's it!
What's what?
I've come up with a new recipe. That's it! That's it!
And even if not especially deep or complex, I can't deny that the side characters can be incredibly memorable. Like, I was honestly shocked while I was writing all this how many I remembered so well. It's really impressive and caught me off guard. And it's the whole reason this game moved up a rank. And it's the reason for me it rose above 6. It was a tough call between a game that was above average across the board, or a game that was way above that for the majority but fell really short at the end. But I have to go with this placement because at least this game never made me upset. Anyway, back to the characters. You have Luna. While not having a ton going on, she is very memorable for what she does. Sid and Cindy are insanely memorable characters. I thought Iris was easily one of the best Final Fantasy side party members out there. Cor was a badass, and Erden was such a lovable to hate character throughout.
Ceasefire's getting us nowhere.
This game is pretty much the first in the entire series to completely do away with turn-based combat. 13 definitely pushed at the bar, but this game has no preconceptions of being turn-based, which is very understandable considering that it was originally not intended as a mainline entry. It's not entirely hack and slash or anything. It's a weird little unique style that's fast-paced and slashy, but still its own thing. You attack in strings by holding or tapping circle. You have a variety of weapons from swords, bigger swords, spears, and even guns. And you can also use Noctis' powers to teleport by throwing his weapon at an enemy and flying into it. You can't control any of the other members, they will fight on their own alongside you, but you can do team attacks and customize some things. The game also has a leveling system like normal, but a pretty average skill tree. Pretty much like any game with RPG elements nowadays, kinda forgettable and basic. But the one thing that's pretty fucking epic when it does happen are the summons. Not quite as common or extensive as other entries, but when they do appear, they are one of the most epic and breathtaking sights in all of gaming. The first time I saw Ramuh appear, I literally went from lazily lying back to shooting up with my mouth gaped open. Not a lot of gaming moments that are literally jaw-dropping for me. It's one of the most epic memories of video games I have ever. Of course, one of this game's most defining features is its transport, because a lot of this game takes place driving on a road trip. There are places to stop and explore, and you can leave the car whenever you want, but a lot of this game is definitely spent just driving forward in a pretty straight line, which I know a lot of people absolutely hate with a burning passion, but I never felt too bothered by it. I was usually happy to just sit back, enjoy the ride, enjoy the character interactions, and the fact that you could just lie back and listen to the car's radio, including tracks from previous Final Fantasy games. That was a fantastic touch. And it's not just the obvious ones either, there's a good selection here. I guess some of the biggest problems with this game would be the boss battles can often suck. The most iconic and well known from this game, shown in the E3 trailer, before the game changed, was Leviathan. This boss fight looked like it could have been epic. and many people, including myself, could not wait to face it. How did it turn out? Well, basically you turn Super Saiyan and you pretty much can't die. You hold circle for as long as it takes. The end. Boy, was this boss battle really shit. Probably one of the most disappointing and boring boss fights ever. The final summon you fight in the game did it right. That was how they all should have been. But this is the most recent Final Fantasy mainline title, so I won't spoil things. And of course, the game is pretty notorious for having way too much of the game told in expanded media, such as a movie, a 5-second anime, future DLC. It was a fucking mess. I'm pretty sure all the planned DLC didn't even release. And by then, most people were just done. I know a lot of people hated Chapter 13, the long hallway driven slow chapter, but I had a weird appreciation, because I knew at this point the game was 15 chapters and I didn't want it to end. And I'm pretty sure Chapter 11 and 12 I completed both in roughly 40 minutes, so in my own weird way, an overly long chapter was very appreciated. Like it was restoring balance. Then the side quests were pretty uninspired. They were pretty much universally panned, and yeah, I can easily agree, they were pretty forgettable. But I do have to point out, as I will a few times throughout this list, I love when these games have unique travelling methods, and this game lets you upgrade your car to let it fly. And while messy, I can't pretend it's not a blast to use. Even if crashing does land you into a painfully long loading screen. So yeah, overall it had a lot of flaws, and even non-flawed moments are above average mostly at best. But pretty above average at this point in the list, with 11 games to go, is definitely okay by me.
The time has come.
Number 11. Final Fantasy XIV. Not the first online MMO in the series, that honour goes of course to 11, but the only one I have played. And I have to say, it was one of the most exciting and magical gaming moments in my entire life. This game, as many people know, released as an absolute disaster in many aspects. So they decided on a drastic course of action. They scrapped it and destroyed the world. And not just in real life either. They had Bahamut rise from the sky and level the land in one of the most chilling, epic and beautiful cutscenes I have ever seen, accompanied by one of the most epically haunting pieces of music in the entire franchise. This is honestly one of the best gaming moments out there. Even if you don't have interest in playing the game, look up the opening cutscene. It is phenomenal. And of course it all happened in real time, where all of the players could gather around to see the world of this MMO be destroyed. But as they say, sometimes things have to fall apart to make way for better things. And that's what they did. Under new management from Yoshi P, the current producer for the upcoming Final Fantasy XVI, the game was brought back under a new title, A Realm Reborn. Risen from the ashes of a fallen mess, came one of the most successful and well-received MMOs ever made. And it still goes incredibly strong to this day, after over a decade, with countless players and newcomers, massive and amazingly worthwhile expansions and updates, and so much more. Even as someone who's new to MMOs when I played it, it felt like this was an amazing starting point. It can be scary, but it never really felt overwhelming. It's hard for me to say a ton about this game, not being an MMO guy, and I honestly can't think of any real negatives from my experience. but that's largely due to inexperience. I guess it can suck that you have to jump into things like you're expected to know the layout of a dungeon and everything you're supposed to do, or you're letting people down who do know what they're doing, but I don't even know how that could be really helped. I guess it could let you do it yourself sometimes, it could be cool, I don't know. And it plays, as far as I can tell, like most MMORPGs. You have your normal attacks, your hotkeys for other moves. There's many classes, you got your typical types like your tanks, your healers and your DPS. But also jobs like carpenters or forager types, if you want to break from all the combat to make equipment or decorations. Which quite a bit of my experience was spent doing. Big part of the story revolves around fighting summons that are familiar to any Final Fantasy fan, and some of these boss fights were unbelievable, even in my limited experience with the game. The Kraken, for example, was a pretty awesome boss fight that I'm really glad I got to experience. This is going to be a shorter entry because, like I said, it's not exactly an area I'm really familiar with. All I know is my time with this game is an amazingly fond memory that I hold very dear to me. And whether I go back to it someday or not, I will always cherish the time I spent on this game, whether it be alone, with my friends, or with the strangers that I met along the way. Number 10. Final Fantasy IX. I have a weird little history with Final Fantasy IX. I played it for a few minutes, probably back around the time I first played 8, when I was very, very young. But I don't really remember anything at all, except for this hippo lady and Vivi. I tried again years later when it was on the PS3 on the PS Classic section. I got literally to the final boss and got my ass handed to me. I planned to return and beat it, but it just never happened. But finally, eventually, not even too long ago, I played through this beautiful adventure fully for the first time on the PS4. This is not only the final Final Fantasy on the PS1, but also the last game in the franchise that the creator, Hironobu Sakaguchi, was heavily involved in. The game stars Zidane, who, with his comrades, plan to kidnap Garnet, the Princess of Alexandria. However, when they reach her, not only does she not resist, she is eager to leave for her own reasons too, because her mother, Queen Braun, has been acting suspicious and strange lately, prompting her to want to leave and find a way to help. Alongside the crew for various reasons and situations, they are also joined by Garnet's sworn protector and knight Steiner, and one of Final Fantasy's most iconic characters by far, the Black Mage, Vivi. Throughout the story they will travel this beautiful world, meet colourful and amazing party members, and try to find out what's wrong with the Queen, and to stop her and the main villain of the game, Kuja, from wreaking havoc upon the world. This game is definitely more inspired by older Final Fantasy games than more current ones at the time, and nowhere is that more evident than in the character design. Like a lot of the sprite-based entries, a lot of the cast in this game are not human. Like I already mentioned, there's hippo-looking creatures, rat people, Quina. The variety here is really upped, and it's a lot more visible and noticeable too in this game than it would be in the older ones because of the graphics, of course. They are no longer just little sprites. I think out of all the games, this was the hardest for me to choose my party in. Most of these characters are incredible, compelling, and amazing. Zidane, Vivi, Aiko, Garnet, and Steiner are some of my favourite characters across all of the games. And the only ones I don't really like are Amarant, who I think is a bit bland and forgotten and underdeveloped, and Quina, who has exactly one trait in the entire game. They like food. Every cutscene is the exact same. Zidane will say, "I'll go north." Steiner will mention going south. Vivi will go to the west. And Quina, well, Quina will go look for some food. And it might shock you to hear this, but it doesn't get funnier or more likeable the 45th time they do it either. The rest of the non-playable cast are great too. Sid is back, of course, and a big part of the story. Zidane's friends who join you sometimes are all very likeable. Queen Braun is a great antagonist, and Kuja is an amazing villain. He really brings that vibe that makes you kinda off and uncomfortable, just kind of on edge around him, like he could snap at any moment. Battle system wise, it's pretty much your standard. It uses a system similar to 6 did with the Espers to let you learn abilities, and then master them and unequip the item to learn more. But this time it's done through equipment. So mostly gameplay wise, it's what you'd expect by this point in the franchise. They have their system, they don't need any drastic changes, and most quality of life stuff has been pretty ironed out at this point by now. But they do have some cool minigames like skipping. And the Tetramaster, a card game which I suck at. Really bad. But I do enjoy a lot. Not quite up with Final Fantasy VIII's card game, but we'll get to that later. Of course, as you can see, the game is absolutely beautiful to look at. It's colourful and can be very unique, and the FMVs in this game are some of my favourites across the whole series. When I was playing through this on my PS4, I used the video capture to capture many of the FMVs in this game, and I still have them on it to this day because I just don't want to lose them. They are unbelievable. Some of them are unbelievably beautiful. And that same vibe and energy carries over to the music too. The opening music is unbelievably catchy, and I can remember it right now, even not after hearing it in about a year or two. Definitely one of my favourite tracks in the franchise. Melodies of Life is such a bittersweet ending song.
Done fast, and then we said goodbye. And who'll hear the echoes of stories never told? Let them ring out loud till they unfold.
And the whole game just has amazing music to make everything feel distinct and fresh. I'm not a music expert or anything, I'm not good at analysing it, but the music has to feel like it carries a strong mix of colourful fun, but with a bit of a darkness in there, which is probably the best way to describe this game as a whole. Colourful, compelling and fun, but with a bit of existential dread in there too. My only big issues with this game is that for the most part your party is heavily chosen for you based on the story, which I don't mind at all. I think it's where the story is at its most compelling and where the character relationships really sucked me in the most. But near the end of the game it opens up to let you choose your party however you want, and I really feel like the character relationships took a nosedive here. Which makes sense, I don't have to have any specific member in my party, so of course the dialogue and interactions won't be as expansive or planned. I mean, you can't hide any vital character stuff in an optional cutscene. But I really think it hurt the end hours a lot. If that didn't happen, I can easily picture this rising a rank or two. And Amaranth, like I said, maybe it's because I never used him, but he tries to have an arc at the end, like he has something going on at one stage. And I was just sitting there thinking, dude, you've never talked to anyone. Stop acting like this is a thing. Stop acting like you built this up, and let me move on. But I'm definitely very happy I finally did finish it when I did. It was a beautiful journey, and clearly, among the Final Fantasy community, a game that has touched people in ways few games could even hope to. And I guess I'll give a quick mention to the rumours about a Final Fantasy IX TV show coming out. I think it was supposed to be officially revealed this year, but didn't happen. So, who knows? I'm definitely, if nothing else, morbidly curious.
A voice from the past, joining yours and mine, adding up the layers of harmony. And so it goes on and on. Melodies of life to the sky beyond the flying birds.
Number 9. Final Fantasy IV. The first Final Fantasy game to really represent in a strong way what the franchise would eventually become. This is the first time characters and relationships between them became such a focal point in the games. It was no longer just blank slate jobs or vaguely defined party members. They truly had compelling and interesting characters that you would really care about. I'm probably going to say this a couple of times, but I definitely think it's safe to call Final Fantasy IV one of the most important and influential games on the history and what would be the future of this franchise. This is one I had to go back and play for this video, because I had played it before but only on the DS, and that was so long ago I couldn't possibly give it a fair placement without going back. And of course, that was a 3D remake too. It's possible I played a tiny bit in the Game Boy Advance or the PS1, but nothing significant. This game stars the Dark Knight, Cecil, commander of the Red Wings, an air fleet from the city of Baron, which is the most powerful nation due to its airships. In one of the franchise's most iconic and well-known opening shots, after being ordered to take the crystal from a nation of non-aggressive people, Cecil starts to question his king, and when he's sent out on a mission that destroys an entire village except for one child, he resolves to stand against the king and the actions he can no longer support, leading him on an adventure to stop Baron's forces, now under the new leadership from the villain Golbez, and stop them from obtaining all of the crystals for, undoubtedly, nefarious reasons. This is the first in the series to start doing more of a revolving door of party members thing, while Cecil will, I'm pretty sure, always be your team leader. There might have been one part where you play as somebody else, but I might be making that up. If it did happen, it was only like once. But that's it. Throughout, you might be separated from everybody else at some point in the game. There is no second permanent party member. It switches up so much. And for such an old game, coming up in 32 years, these characters have seriously stood the test of time. Cecil is still a very beloved protagonist. His love interest Rosa is still an amazing partner to have. Kane is probably one of the most legendary dragoons in the entire franchise. Rydia is one of the most, if not the most beloved and iconic summoner. Palom and Porom are adorably great. Tella and Edward are obviously fondly remembered, but don't worry, I'll get to that soon. And of course the villain Golbez, who I think you could easily consider Final Fantasy's first real, personal, really memorable villain. You interact multiple times, he hurts you, he messes with your friends and your life. Easily the first antagonist you really want to kill, I think. For reasons beyond just, he's the bad guy. I think in terms of pure consistency, it might have my favourite cast of party members, or at least a very, very high contender. And each character is distinct in personality and design. I'll try to stop repeating this as much, but battle system wise, there isn't a ton to add to what I've said before about other turn-based Final Fantasy games. This is, however, the first game to abandon their completely turn-based system and introduce the more well-known ATB system. And a really unique feature, you get 5 characters in battle, as opposed to the usual 4 from earlier games or 3 from the later ones. Battles also now take place on actual backgrounds. Up until this point in the franchise, the battle screens were basically just black screens with a few small trees or something in the back to show you where you were. So it was nice to see this improvement. It's one of the many little things that you wouldn't really appreciate if you didn't play the older games first, which is a big reason I'm glad I played them in order. If you just went back to this now, this would probably mean nothing to you. Other little updates and firsts from this game: it's the first game to show you your playtime. It finally lets you see which party members can equip weapons or armor while you're in a shop. You can swap the magic order around, which definitely saves so much time and frustration here. You can change the window color, and it's the first game to abandon buying spells. Now you get them upon leveling up with certain characters instead. Some of those are obviously more important than others, but there were a lot of nice little updates and quality of life improvements that really improved the game a lot. Being the first entry on a new system on the Super Nintendo, It had a big leap in both graphics and in complexity. Like I already mentioned, you no longer have a black void in the battle screens. The animations, graphics, textures, colours, locations, characters all look significantly more impressive and beautiful here. You get character portraits in the menus, including when inflicted with body changing status effects like Toad or Pig, and your hair flows when you're walking. And we all know how iconic hair graphics will become for Square Enix in the future. You can even see much more clearly when you're on higher parts of a floor, for example. Being able to see multiple layers of a cave, locations like the last floor of the water passage or Mount Hobbs look absolutely gorgeous. Not only by today's standards does it hold up, but compared to Final Fantasy III, it's night and day. And moments like seeing two airships meet on a bridge in the air is one of the coolest shots I've ever seen. I'm pretty sure this was intended as an NES game before moving to the Super Nintendo, so that's most likely what held it back in a few aspects, at least a little bit, but it is still an undeniable leap from 3. A few other random visual moments I love in this game are the fact that a toaded cane can still use jump, which I enjoyed quite a lot. And when Edge dies in battle, he kinda looks like the dry bones from Super Mario games. I don't know if that's just me, but I can't not see it. And how could I not mention Final Fantasy's first meme? The first moment people love to laugh at, the famous, ridiculous and absolute lunacy of Tella calling Edward a spoony bird. The game's over 30 years old and people still laugh their ass off at this moment. And while the music doesn't have a ton of standout tracks, you don't need a fancy music degree to tell that the music here is much more complex and impressive. It's so much more varied and lively, such as the Bar and Castle theme, again, Mount Hobbs, and the music after you're left stranded at one event and you're left completely alone is such a beautifully somber and bleak feeling. And then there's Golbez's theme. It is a great early example of a villain theme done right. It's so menacing and establishes the villain perfectly and instantly. I think the main reason this isn't a bit higher up on the list is something similar to not only a few of the other previous entries, but a big thing for all of the Super Nintendo Final Fantasy games. The ending moments annoyed me quite a bit. It was like every location after a certain event in this game not only went on a lot longer, but every enemy in the game was given an insane speed boost. Like, I'm talking 5 or 6 attacks before I could get a chance to move, out of absolutely nowhere. It was fine before, then one location later, boom. It was like I skipped a few hours by mistake. Not as painful as 6, but still a frustrating way to end things. And without any spoilers, of course, some characters just kind of appeared at the end with no explanation, including one thing where you thought you would solve something yourself, but it just happens off screen. They're back. And while there are some optional bosses and summons, and that's a nice touch, their power level is too close to the final boss, making them generally not useful or way too difficult when they would be useful. By the time you beat them and unlock them, you can likely beat the final boss without them. But that was mostly sectioned off to the final few hours, and it definitely didn't come even close to ruining the experience. And the ending was a beautiful and fantastic reward, and might be one of my favourite epilogues in the whole franchise. Final Fantasy IV is easily one of the most praised Final Fantasy games, and it's very easy to see why. It has stayed in people's hearts for over 30 years, and I don't think that's likely to change. And it truly paved the way for what Final Fantasy was to become. Number 8. Final Fantasy II. Released exactly 1 day shy of a year after Final Fantasy I, this was the first time Final Fantasy was shown to not be a one-hit wonder, but definitely the first to establish what Final Fantasy would be. A different story, different characters, a different world, with similar building blocks and elements, but standalone titles that were connected in name only. I originally played the Game Boy Advance version of this game on a friend's emulator when I was like 13, and I absolutely loved it right from the beginning. I know this is a pretty unloved game in the community, but for me it struck something in me right from the beginning. I played it on the PSP later too, and once again had a blast. And for this video I went back to the very beginning, the NES version. A translated version of course, since this never got an official English release until the PlayStation 1 version. And while I still massively enjoyed it, it definitely dropped a few ranks. It used to be my number 5 spot. I'm going to lump story and character together for this one, because it's a lot more small scale and I think it makes more sense. The story in this game, you begin as 4 named characters. You can change your names, but unlike 1, these are characters, not just job classes. You got Firion, Maria, Guy and Leon. They get attacked by Empire soldiers and are defeated in battle, and all, except for Leon, wake up in the home base of the rebels in a town called Flint, led by Princess Hilda. You join up with them in order to stop the Empire from taking over. Pretty standard. Along the way you will do tasks to strengthen your own alliance, weaken the Empire, regain locations from their clutches, with mostly the same party, but the 4th slot will change to fit the character you have with you at the time. So while obviously nowhere near your 6s or your 7s, it is a massive leap in character and story from the original, especially the supporting cast. Despite not being the most fleshed out, I still remembered Minwoo for years between playthroughs, or Hilda, and even if some names escape me, I remember a few other side characters too, even if they have little screen time, which for such an old primitive game I think is impressive. And of course this is the first entry to introduce a lifelong staple for the franchise, Sid. And while not a huge character here, it's definitely cool to see the first iteration and the origin of such a long-standing tradition. Still a long way to go, but definitely an important, humble beginning to these games, telling their epic stories that would come in the future. A big part of why people dislike this game is the mechanics. While it is a turn-based game like the original, you equip weapons, you buy magic, and you do a certain amount of hits, mostly the same. The leveling system here is pretty different than anything I've ever seen. You don't level up in this. Your stats increase based off your battle actions. Taking damage might increase HP at the end of the battle. Attacking may increase your attack. Using magic enough times will make it more powerful or change the spell. You know, from Fire 1 to Fire 2. And weapon proficiency upgrades as well to determine how many times you will hit the enemy. And while a lot of people don't feel the same, I seriously adore this leveling system. I may have mentioned already, but I really love it when Final Fantasy games have alternate leveling systems, especially when it's alongside traditional leveling like the license board from 12. Not for everybody, but for me it adds a ton of enjoyment. I just have a weird love for more gradual leveling styles, I think. And it made even grinding in this game so much fun. Graphically, it is what you see. Obviously not the visual spectacle of 8 or 9, or the timeless beautiful sprites of 4, but for me I think there's a charm to it. It's pretty much undeniably dated, but it grew on me very soon into my journey when I played the first game, so while really not much to say, and it's hard to even say it really holds up, I have a certain appreciation for it. It also has a couple of okay music tracks, but this was before Final Fantasy had its recognition as a franchise where even if the game wasn't something you like, the music would at least be amazing. I suppose like 12, it doesn't have any standout tracks for me, but it's early on so it's definitely more forgivable. It also has a weird once in a franchise system where you learn words, and then you can ask a different character about that word to get hints on where to go or what to do or open new locations. Sometimes it can be pretty frustrating to have to do it to figure out one little hint, but mostly I enjoyed it. It was cute. The biggest reason this game dropped a few spots after playing it again are for a few really frustrating issues throughout. Enemy ambushes are unnaturally excessive. At some points it's a surprise if you don't get ambushed for 2 or 3 battles in a row. It really, really overdoes it. It could be cut in half and it would still be excessive. Every time a character dies, they automatically revive in the back row when you heal them, which is very easy to forget when it happens a lot, and when allies are in the back, they rarely, if ever, hit with a physical attack. So that is going to happen to you probably a lot. You'll go into a battle with 2 allies who can't do anything. Enemies escaping is a really annoying thing. You'll get into a battle and they will all just, or most of them will just run away, sometimes halfway through the battle. And if you don't know, with Final Fantasy 1 and 2, nobody will move until you pick an attack for every party member. So it can be really time wasting. There's a world map. I mean, it's there, but scrolling on it is so slow. I think a snail could traverse the real world faster. I mean, just look at this. This is not being slowed down. Here it is on triple speed. The last dungeon is a bit long and there's a huge difficulty spike between 2 floors. So you can be surprised and sent back to the start really easily with no save points or anything in between. And my most hated thing in Final Fantasy 1 and 2, multiple enemies attacking slowly. Back here, it was before magic or multi-hit attacks would attack everyone at once. If an enemy casts fire on your whole party, for example, every hit is like an individual attack. The enemy will cast fire, you get hit, it shows damage, move on to the next party member, then repeat. And I already mentioned ambushing being an issue. See where I'm going with this? It is entirely possible, and somewhat common even, to be ambushed by 6 enemies, and each one will cast fire on the entire party. Let's do some math, shall we? 6 enemies attacking each character. That is 24 moves before you can strike. Each attack takes, we'll say, 4 seconds. 4 times 24 is 96. And that is 96 seconds, or 1 minute and 36 seconds, waiting for enemies to stop attacking. And of course, if it's an ambush, it's entirely possible a few, if not all of them, will do it again. Worst case scenario, that's 3 whole minutes just watching enemies attack you. And it will happen a few times. It's an absolute nightmare when it does. And it's not a game long issue, but it's easily common enough to be a very painful memory. But despite its obvious dated flaws, I still loved this game. A lot. And even if it did drop a few spots in the making of this list, I can't wait to play it again. I definitely want to give the PS1 version a spin next, being one of the only versions I haven't played. And then hopefully if the Pixel remaster gets a PS4 release, that's 2 versions that I can't wait to try. And if nothing else, the fact that I'm interested in playing a JRPG 2 more times is a testament to how much I can get into this game, and despite the flaws, how much I really love it. Number 7. Final Fantasy 1. Or just Final Fantasy. The very original. The one that started it all, and the beginning of what would go on to change the landscape of JRPGs and lives all over the world for generations to come. Not only the first Final Fantasy, not only the birthday boy, but the game that I think played more of a part than any in the creation of this channel. This is the game that for some reason or another gave me enough of a reason to want to write about it. Yeah, I tried my hand at writing before videos and quickly realised, not for me. But I will leave the written review I did in the description, in case anyone might be interested in seeing my beginning. I was watching somebody play the PS1 version on YouTube, and I decided to try the NES one on the NES Classic. And even though I'd already tried it a few times before and felt like it was too dated or clunky to enjoy, I used to have a pretty short answer to my feelings on the original version of this game. One of my favourites, so long as you're talking about the PS1 version or later. But for some reason, playing it this time while watching someone play the PS1 version, something clicked. And I fell in love with it, faults and all. This game, as you can probably expect, based on the time it came out, and what I said in the Final Fantasy II entry, has an incredibly vague, basic, and less compelling story. The world is veiled in darkness, the wind stops, the sea is wild, and the earth begins to rot. The people wait, their only hope, a prophecy. When the world is in darkness, 4 warriors will come. After a long journey, 4 young warriors arrive, each holding an orb. After defeating Garland at the beginning of the game and rescuing Princess Sarah, you embark on a journey to save the world from the threat of the 4 fiends and restore order to the world. Most of the story is honestly pretty unrelated to this. You will go from place to place doing quests for whoever asks. You will find an item for a dwarf who will give you an item to give to a lady in a cave, which will cause the next item to come out or a new location to open. Like I said, it's not the focus back then. Gameplay is pretty much as basic as a turn-based JRPG could get. You attack, you use magic, you heal, and you use items. That's it. Everything is as primitive and simple as you could ever imagine. But you do get a choice between 6 classes right from the start, between Warrior, Monk, Thief, Black Wizard, White Wizard, and Red Wizard. You gain magic from buying it, but you can only have 3 per level, usually with 4 options for each level, and no way to remove them. So choose carefully. Also, you can check what they do beforehand, so good luck. Thankfully, the age of the internet makes it all a lot easier to see what the spells do, and more importantly, to see which spells the game mechanics got wrong and ended up not working. Some spells just straight up do nothing in the original, which sounds like a negative, but to someone like me who hates choices like this and gets really stressed out by them, it actually came as a massive relief. I didn't mention it in the last entry, but Final Fantasy 1 and 2 have a similar annoyance. If there are 2 enemies and you attack the top one with each character, like I said, you don't move until you choose a command for every party member. If the first enemy kills the top enemy, every other attack will try to attack the empty space, resulting in a wasted turn. It wouldn't be until Final Fantasy 3 where it would automatically move on to the next enemy. So that can slow things down badly, especially when you get into a frequent situation of where the fuck do I go and have to explore. So when fighting weak enemies, you can't just tap attack and kill everyone without wasting a lot of time. Also, you will start off by missing a lot of attacks, but as it progresses and you level up, you get to attack more times. And it's honestly one of the most satisfying feelings ever to get stronger in this game. Few games have that satisfaction. Also, this game can be really tough. It's before the age of buying 99 Phoenix Downs really easily. Not only are there no reviving items, spells have a limited use, which do increase as you level up. So you might only have 4 uses of life out in the field before you have to return to town to do it there. Personally, it helped a lot to treat this almost like a roguelike dungeon kind of game. Something like Rogue Legacy, where you'll venture out, maybe get halfway to the next town, lose a party member or 2, and then return to town slightly stronger with more gold to buy better equipment and magic. And then you try again and get further. It's a mentality that really helped me to enjoy it more. Graphically, it's what you see again. Like 2, it is obviously dated as hell. It's 35 years old, how wouldn't it be? But, like I said, I was watching a Let's Play of the PS1 game while I was playing the NES version, so I often had direct comparison. And obviously the PS1 version is objectively better and more impressive, sure, but something happened while I was playing it, and the simple graphics and art just grew on me. to a point where I started to prefer these white things as mountains, and I just grew to appreciate the hell out of the look of this game. This might be a good time to bring it up, but if you're interested in this kind of stuff, like the graphics and the animation analysis and all that, there is a really great and interesting series on YouTube called The Animation of Final Fantasy. The guy knows way more about the ins and outs of this stuff than I do. He's currently on 4, and I think 5 will be out soon based on the time between usual entries, so definitely check that out if you're interested in this stuff too. Of course, I'll leave that in the description too in case you want to check it out. And also, like 2, the music isn't really fondly known yet. And if I'm going to be honest, it can get a bit grating at times when it loops. After a while of listening to it, it was easy to get headaches. But it does give a few of the franchise's most iconic tracks, so I think that makes up for it. And in fairness, I don't think they intended you to play this game for like 6 or 7 hours at a time. But I was so sucked into it. The game is horribly addicting to me. So that probably didn't help in that aspect. And again, like 2, the problems are pretty much the same. Enemies can also do the same attacks on you where they ambush you and attack every member multiple times. But thankfully the ambushes aren't anywhere close to being as common in this one. And the biggest problem for me that caused me to give up the first 3 or 4 times I ever attempted this, there is no way to see what stat changes a weapon will give you without buying and equipping it. So if you have a sword but want to see what a new sword will do, you have to buy it, check your stats, note your attack, equip the weapon, check your stats again. If it's better, great, move on. If not, re-equip the old one. Now that might not sound too bad, but remember you have to do this with 4 characters in every town for weapons and armor. It's a 35-year-old pioneer of a franchise, I can't be too hard on it, but it can be a very significant hurdle to overcome. But for the first attempt, and such a big part for not only the franchise but for a genre, it is a charming and very humble beginning to this JRPG juggernaut that continues on to this day, and to a franchise that has defined lives, careers, and has had a profound and life-changing impact on countless people, of course including me. I have to love and respect the hell out of this game. Not that I can exactly recommend going back to the original unless you're curious about that kind of stuff. There are so many later versions. I personally recommend the PSP or the Game Boy Advance version. Can't really comment on the Pixel remaster, I really don't know much about it. So, happy birthday to this game that I only recently grew to give the appreciation and love it deserves. And to the game that's pretty much single-handedly inspired me to put myself out there like this. Number 6. Final Fantasy III. To close out the NES trilogy. This is the only entry I had never played before starting off this project. I played roughly an hour on the DS remake, but that's pretty different and was a very short attempt. When I thought about this list before and how I would rank these games, this is what I fully intended to put right at the bottom, based on my very brief experience with the remake. And it felt right because, as I said in the 12 entry, nobody really cares about 3. Needless to say, things changed. A lot. This game is easily what I consider to be the absolute most underrated, underappreciated game in this whole franchise. I never expected it to impact me or appeal to me nearly as much as it did, but I have never been so happy to be so wrong. This game is not only amazing, but one of the most influential games in the franchise, I think. Especially in terms of game mechanics. I think what 4 did for the story, this did for a lot of other things. So even if people don't talk about it as much, I think it's a shame and it deserves way more recognition, praise, and most of all, more respect for what it did. I love this game so much that I made a whole video just to praise it. I needed to just because of how good it hit. So I'll keep this a bit shorter and leave that video in the description too if you want a more in-depth look at my feelings towards this underrated gem. This game goes back to a less character focused approach, but not quite to the level of 1. It's a good blend of the first and the second game. The crystals have sunk, darkness is going to spread, and 4 orphan main character blank slates are touched by the crystal to become the warriors of light. You go on a journey to save the crystals, meeting new cool characters along the way, some who will join you as a guest, not in battle but just as a travel companion. They have a really good impact on the story too, and these can be pretty great characters, especially for the time. Nothing much compared to 4 or later, sure, but compared to 1, definitely a huge step up. Sid is even more of a character who gives you your first airship, truly establishing him as the airship guy and has a returning legacy forever. The quality of life improvements and updates to battle are definitely one of the most appreciated additions to this game. My biggest complaints from 1 and 2 are gone. Magic or multi-hit attacks hit everyone really quickly, and the damage is displayed all at once, and then you can just move on. It's one of my favourite improvements to the series, like I said, especially playing through them in order. And of course this is the introduction of the job system, which is one of Final Fantasy's most well-known and iconic features that can add a lot of variety to your gameplay. There are 24 to choose from knights to magic users to dragoons and even summoners, because this is the first Final Fantasy to introduce summoning, which I think is safe to say is a pretty big and important and influential addition to this franchise. Graphically, it's a great update. Things are looking a lot more colourful, detailed and varied, and the sprites are more unique too. You can actually tell pretty much any character apart, and the magic animations are way more flashy and impressive too. Other first and important things are, you get your very first big airship that you can enter as a base and not just a method of transport. The very first big city, a big 4-part area to represent the massive location. Probably because the NES couldn't handle an actual big location, so they split it. The first game to let you explore underwater in a submarine. The first optional bosses to let you recruit more summons even. It's the first game to let you buy multiple items at once instead of having to buy them one at a time, which is an unbelievable speed up. And even little things like having a mini village or letting you traverse as a toad. The only major annoyances about this game is you can't switch jobs or unequipping everything, which makes experimenting a really daunting, slow task. And you can't change equipment without unequipping it first, meaning if your inventory is full, you can't just change a sword for a better sword. You need space in your bag to put your old equipment into before, and if you can't do that, you have to throw something away or just keep the old weapon. Like I said, a shorter entry because I have a whole video about it, and this is long enough without me repeating all of that. But if there's anything on this list that I urge you to play, it's this one. It's easily one of my favourite surprises over the year, and I love this game so much more than I ever thought I would. I can't wait to try the remake again sometime and see if I feel differently, but I hope you will try out one of my most underrated Final Fantasy experiences, especially if you never had. And more importantly, if you wrote it off. Number 5. Final Fantasy V. Alright, now we're getting close to the end. The top 5, this is where it gets serious. Final Fantasy V is another one that jumped very significantly up this ranking, and if you had asked me 3 months ago, I probably would have put it near the bottom. but I hadn't played it enough, only a bit in the Game Boy Advance and maybe the PS1. And based on how overwhelmed I personally can get by the job system, I didn't think it would change much. Boy, was I wrong. This is what a lot of people would usually call the most underrated Final Fantasy game. And obviously I fucking love it. But it's hard to consider something underrated when all you've ever heard about it was positivity, you know? When playing through these games, I kept a list of pros and cons and kind of like neutral changes just to have a good update for myself when writing this. And this game, with no close competition, had the biggest list of pros. Be it updates, quality of life stuff, or new things. Story this time, the King of Tycoon leaves his daughter to go check out the Wind Crystal, which seems to be having problems. And while I don't want to get ahead of myself, the opening scene music while this happens is one of the most underrated, beautiful, foreboding pieces of music I have ever heard in my life. It truly is a mind-blowing theme that rivals some of the most beloved music in this franchise, and that's in a franchise that has some of the most phenomenal soundtracks in all of gaming. Well, the wind stops, a meteor falls from the sky, and your main character Butts goes off to investigate with his trusty chocobo companion Boko. He sees two goblins carrying away a girl named Lena, the same girl from the opening scene, and he fights them off and helps her, where they meet an old man named Galoof who has amnesia. But he knows his name and his goal, which is of course the Wind Shrine, where Lena is headed. Butts plans to continue his wandering journey, but this doesn't sit well with Boko. So Butts goes off to find Lena and Galoof, and after saving them once again from goblins and quakes, Butts decides to join them on their journey to the Wind Shrine, because as he puts it, the wind is calling. Although Galoof pretty swiftly shuts down this notion and claims it's just because he wants to spend some time with Lena. They meet up with the pirate captain Faris, who helps with her ship to the Wind Shrine, and when they make it to the shattered Wind Crystal, they are branded as the Warriors of Light, tasked to protect the 3 remaining crystals before a dark force re-enters the world to bring about a terrible fate. The story overall is probably one of my favourites, in a lot of ways, especially in the Super Nintendo era. It really feels like the biggest yet in scope threat, and it just feels so grand. It really felt long and epic, and even if this is typically said as a negative thing, it felt so much longer than it was. By the end of this game, I would think back to moments from earlier in the story and had to think hard for a second to remember if I was actually thinking about this game or a previous one. That's how big the scale was for this story. There is even some optional dialogue that isn't vital or needed, but is there after certain events if you care enough. And thankfully I was invested enough that I checked back with people or locations after certain story events just to see how they reacted or if anything changed. This is the first game to have a main cast of actual characters instead of either blank slates or revolving door of party members, where it's not blank jobs like 1 or 3, much more defined than 2, and unlike 4 you just have a core party that doesn't change multiple times throughout. Butts, Lena, Galoof and Faris are 4 characters that really grew with me throughout the journey and I came to absolutely love. It really felt like the best dynamic between a party yet. While 4 definitely laid the foundation, 5 was the first to make it feel like you were travelling with some buddies. They're not always serious, it's less rigid and stiff. Sure, 4 had some moments of levity and all that, but it felt more contained to specific comedy relief characters. 5 was the first game to have good teasing and fun character interactions, and it can even be pretty funny at times. This is the first Final Fantasy, chronologically speaking, to make me laugh out loud multiple times. And there are some great side and supporting characters, possibly the most involved and complex Cid yet, his grandson Mid. Even one-off characters like the Counselor at Tycoon or Zoc are surprisingly memorable. And of course Boko gets a loving shout out too. And Exdeath, the villain of this game, is a fantastic antagonist. He's threatening, he hurts you, and he really makes you want to kill him. He has much more of a presence throughout the game, making him one of my favourite antagonists in all of Final Fantasy. Definitely my favourite at this stage in the series. He is such an underrated and amazing villain. The gameplay here I think is better than ever. Pretty defined by now, so not hugely different. But it is the first to show the ATB gauge in battle. 4 introduced it, but 5 finally let you have a better visual of it. Jobs are back from 3, but the classes have so much more variety to them. From enemy skills to songs to mixing to terrain abilities, which have a whole bunch of different environmental attacks. It was one of my favourite. There is so much to experiment with this time around. And unlike 3, they are way more simple and convenient to experiment with. Not only do they not require you to unequip everything first, but you can choose to auto-equip the optimal equipment after, making it so quick and easy if you just want to test a new job really quick to see if you like them. The jobs also level up this time around to gain new abilities, and you can even keep one ability from a job that you level up to use on a different job, upping the variety and play size through the roof, and giving reasons to test a job that you might typically ignore. And to make it even better, they actually all look different depending on the character. Bots as a white mage look different from Lena as a white mage. Galuf as a dragoon looks different from Faris as a dragoon. Unfortunately, this doesn't carry over to the world map, but this is an insane amount of design variety in battle. The enemies and boss fights have a ton of cool designs and mechanics too. Atomos, for example, is one of the most creative and unique boss fights in JRPGs I've ever seen. If all of your characters are alive, he will use Comet, which is really powerful. But if one of your character dies, it will use weaker moves like Slow or Demi. But then he will slowly suck the character in over time, the longer they remain down. It was easily a standout battle among all games I've played. And obviously no spoilers, but the final boss is easily the coolest design in a boss fight yet, maybe overall. And the battle itself is a lot more complex and varied than the previous games, to really keep you on your toes. And his second form is what I can only describe as an amalgamation of pure madness. Either play it yourself or look it up if you want to see, but there's a little tease. And like I said, definitely the most involved and intense boss fight so far. Multiple attacks, keeping you on your toes, and it was an amazing final battle that really had me on the edge of my seat, practically yelling at the game the whole time. Be it in a bit of anger or excitement, because it was by far the most satisfying villain to conquer yet. A few other things I really appreciate are that you can finally see weapons and armor improvements to stats before you equip them. A very, very appreciated and beloved update. I literally screamed out in excitement when I finally saw it, after playing through 4 games where I couldn't. Probably meaningless for most people, but like I said, I played 1 to 6 in order in a short time, so little updates and improvements like this are way more appreciated in that way. Also, scan works better. In 4 it rarely worked, but this time it works on the majority of enemies and bosses to see their HP and some weaknesses. And finally, there's a separate slot for key items, which the first 4 games didn't have, and it helps you to avoid clutter too quickly and is a massive comfort boost. However, there are some negatives. The late game has some of the same crap as 4, with way too many enemies attacking way too many times. And they have an overused habit of attacking instantly too. It's okay sometimes, but it's frustrating when almost every encounter just ignores the rules of the game and attacks instantly or always attacks first. Bahamut, while the coolest design yet, easily, is a really crappy boss fight. He uses all really weak attacks until the end, where he uses what is pretty much guaranteed to be an insta-kill with his Mega Flare. Kind of like the boss in 6 on the Fanatic's Tower, except it's not after he dies. So in retrospect, I kind of appreciate it more for that. Also, way too many late game enemies have a crazy low steal rate. You will attempt to steal 6 times and fail every time, just to finally get a potion. Killing an enemy at this point in the game will give me enough money to buy 20 of them, but it gives me 1 potion when I steal. It just feels like a bad waste of time and effort. And of course, this game has the franchise's very first super boss. And while that's obviously a cool bit of history, putting it in a chest in the middle of the final dungeon, where it will insta-kill you, is not very cool at all. I can't imagine how many people got killed by this thing just from opening a chest in the second last room in the final dungeon. This dungeon is long, you fucking assholes, with multiple boss fights. I don't want to do that again. The fuck is wrong with you? But gameplay wise, it is definitely overwhelmingly positive. And graphically, it is a huge step up from 4 even. This is evident from the more dynamic and lively title screen, which is no longer just a static image like in previous games. The world looks so much more detailed. and it's clear from the very first look at the castle in the intro. And that continues on from the top of the Hiryu mountain, where it even has moving clouds and some amazing forest backgrounds that kept me in awe from start to finish. It even has a round world for the first time. I mean, look, it's a globe. That's really cool. Towns are so much more complex, varied, and feel more lived in. Battle backgrounds are too, and they're more detailed and better looking even than 4, which was a huge leap as well. And the animations are just simply more impressive, even adding in new things like walking across a rope or climbing a mountain. And of course, the music. Like I already said, it's fucking amazing. From the opening title's lively music that gets you ready for the adventure ahead, to the opening cutscene, which I already mentioned, but it is one of the most powerful pieces of music I have ever heard. The whole track at Castle Tycoon had me speechless, and I can't believe it doesn't get more attention or praise. Easily one of my favourite non-vocal tracks in the whole franchise. The Carwen theme sounds so familiar, but I can't quite place it. I'm getting Zelda vibes, so if anyone can help with that, feel free to let me know. Honestly, a lot of the music in this game gives me the same feeling as Zelda tracks. And of course, the most well-known theme in this game, the battle at the big bridge, which seems to be a fan favourite for this game. You can also play the piano in bars across the world, improving each time. It's a cute touch. My only complaint about the music is while it is great, catchy and fun, it does repeat way too often. Towns will repeat tracks a lot, and it can wear you down a bit. The world too is one of my favourites. It really feels like home after a while, and it's a ton of fun to explore, from mandatory places to optional locations like Butts' hometown, and even the Mirage Village, which is possibly one of the most uncomfortable, off-putting locations I've ever seen in a game. And if I'm being honest, I'm not 100% why. Overall, this game, like 3, blew my expectations out of the water hard. It honestly shares a lot of similarities. It's like everything 3 introduced, 5 took and pushed to its best self. This game is definitely one of the biggest leaps for me, from where I thought it would end up on the list to where it actually placed. And I think Final Fantasy V easily earns number 5. And I think the fact that I was able to take it seriously with my main character named Butts is a testament to how great this game really is. Number 4. Final Fantasy 13. Yeah, here's going to be a controversial one. I said that there's two controversial entries on any list like this, the top and the bottom. Well, I think with Final Fantasy there's two more, where you place 7 and where you place this one. Final Fantasy 13 released back in 2009 on the PS3 and Xbox 360. To a lot of fan dismay and backlash. Possibly the biggest black sheep in the entire franchise, gaining titles such as Final Hallway 13. Many fans railed against the combat, the super linear direction it took, the characters, and so much more. Not the music though. That's pretty much a universally accepted aspect of any Final Fantasy, but we'll get to that. Me, however, I love this game. I always have. I clearly love the older games too, and that was also the case when I first played this. But I was never one to turn just because of drastic change, or even to be that bothered by it. I care if it's a good product, not about loyalty to a specific style. Not to say that anyone who doesn't like it is afraid of change or anything like that, that's just silly. But in a lot of cases where people railed against big changes, Resident Evil 5 being another example, I was able to get on board easier than a lot of people. It's part of the reason I think I'm happy I didn't grow up around the internet or too many fans. I never had that mentality of, no, this is the one you're not supposed to like. It wasn't even really a concept to me back then. But enough of that, let's get on to the actual game. The story starts off with the main character Lightning riding a train on the world of Cocoon, a floating spherical landmass ruled over by the Foul Sea that towers above the wildlands below called Pulse. Lightning's sister Sarah is given a focus, which is a task from the Foul Sea that one must figure out and complete. If they succeed, legend has it that they will gain eternal life. Fail and you're turned into a monstrous creature called a Seath. Sarah fulfills her task and turns to Crystal, so Lightning and her ragtag team of new allies work together to help Sarah fight back against what are basically the gods of this world, against the military and the citizens of the world who want them dead, so they can, as the back of the box states it, face your destiny. Obviously a very basic and short summary, but I really do love this story and this game's characters. It's significantly more cutscene heavy and focused on the characters, which can really hit home or kill the experience depending on the player. As I already mentioned, the main character of this game is Lightning, an ex-military badass who wields one of the coolest weapons in the franchise, the Gunblade. Like Squall from 8, except it actually shoots bullets, but we'll get to that soon of course. Her sister Sarah isn't a playable character, but a lot of the story revolves around her, so I should mention her. She is a wise and caring character who faces her destiny with obvious fear, but faces it head on until the very end, clearly caring for the people around her too. Her fiancé Snow is apparently a pretty hated character by fans, but I really can't see why. Him and Lightning don't get along very well. Lightning is pretty antagonistic towards him, but right from the beginning Snow pushes on with hope and with one goal: to save his girl. And nothing or no one is going to stop him. Hope is probably one of the most hated characters in this game, and while not as much as Snow or Lightning, I do like Hope a lot. He grows on me fast. He blames Snow for getting his mom killed after inspiring her to join and fight back in the opening moments. He's just a kid, but he keeps up and grows plenty too. Vanille is a character I really do love. Lots of people usually hate this type of Final Fantasy character, the energetic hyper young character such as Yuffie or Riku, but they never got to me. I don't think the same things annoy me as most others. She keeps up her peppy exterior, but she's hiding some pretty regretful stuff. And she's not a resident of Cocoon like most of the others, she comes from the lands below. There's Saz, which funny enough seems to be one of the two characters in this game that are the most liked, but also one of the two who doesn't do as much for me. My party was always Lightning, Snow or Vanille when I could choose. Saz is a gunslinging cool guy who keeps a chocobo in his afro, a baby chocobo, don't worry. And his main goal for most of this is based around getting his son back from wherever he is. And the other favourite, Fang, the badass dragoon lady. This is the type of character people typically love, the less peppy powerhouse like Auron for example, and she starts off seemingly on the enemy side, but she is very close to Vanille and part of her journey is protecting and reuniting with her. I spent more time on characters here because I think with so many cutscenes so close together and a lot of in-game conversations going on in between battles, it's going to be a very important aspect, and again it will probably make or break this game for people. This game also takes on a very Final Fantasy 4 or 9 approach with character interactions, where you will not only have different party members based on where the story is, but you will swap main characters a lot too. I'm honestly not sure what the consensus is on that, but I think it helps keep things fresh and keep you interested in seeing everyone's point of view and what's going on when they're gone. I don't think there's as many great supporting characters here, but if I'm honest, it's been a little while. Berthandalus is a really cool villain, I think. Like the Pope, but he can kick your ass. Snow's comrades at the beginning are really cool, and the little chocobo is adorable, obviously. Like I said, this game is often unaffectionately referred to as Final Hallway 13 or Final Corridor 13, and that is because of its unprecedented linearity. You will walk through a lot of corridors and small hallways, which was a big turn-off for many fans of a typically open franchise. The game does open up later, however, giving you a wide, massive land to explore, optional missions, and a lot more. But a lot of people never made it there. Which brings me to another big stickler for many, the combat system. The thing you will be doing mostly outside of cutscenes and walking around. This game takes a massive leap away from being turn-based. Not to the level of 15 or anything, just still ATB gauges kind of, but it's sped up, there's an auto battle option, no character swapping. You will pick a certain number of attacks really quick and then launch them with AI controlling your party. It's a lot more fast-paced and flashy. You also switch between paradigms on the fly, which means swapping from an attacking-based style and moves to maybe magic or buffs for your party. Healing, that's all dealt with like that. Think of it like auto-swapping jobs in battle. I think it's a fun and somewhat chaotic mess, and a lot of people claim it's just press X to win, but I don't believe anyone who says that played this for very long. Because you have to keep on your toes to make sure to keep up with the constant style of getting the right moves and paradigms to increase your opponent's stagger gauge and kill them before you end up with a quick game over. The stagger gauge, which has clearly been influential, is basically you use certain moves on an enemy to fill up a gauge and it will weaken, open up or immobilize the enemy for you to deal massive damage on. Some bosses or enemies require it before you can do any real damage. If you played the 7 remake, you know what's up. And what can I say about the graphics? They're stunning. They hold up after 13 years like they're brand new. This game is phenomenally impressive and beautiful, especially when it shows off its fast-paced cutscenes or gets out into the open fields or skies. It is spectacular. This has been long enough, so let's get on to the well-accepted positives of this game, the music. This game has one of the most beautiful soundtracks in the whole franchise, which is obviously saying a lot. Whenever me and my friend hang out together, it's pretty much a given the Final Fantasy 13 music will come up at least once. The opening music is still in my head no matter how long I go without hearing it. Then the opening track is great. The Erba theme. And without showing anything, the final battle theme is without a doubt one of the most epic battle themes in all of gaming. I don't know how you could not be hyped with this playing during a fight. So, even if it's generally a rejected game by many, at least back then, I absolutely cherish this game. I think a lot of the disdain for 13 would be less severe if it wasn't for the game getting 2 sequels, which probably stung more for non-fans waiting for new stuff. I actually really loved 13 too, But Lightning Returns I could never get into. But 13, for me, and one of my closest friends, is a much more beloved game and definitely a big part of our early friendship too. So it holds a lot of sentimental value to me in that way as well. And as I stated early on, that's a pretty hard thing to beat. Still hoping for a remaster of this, by the way. Itching to get that platinum trophy once again. Number 3. Final Fantasy VII. The big one. I feel like any list for this series, people are curious more than any where this one will rank. Obviously without any contest, the most well-known, popular and mainstream Final Fantasy game ever since its release 25 years ago this year. Of course, the more popular and beloved something is, the more it can be considered overrated or overhyped. But for me, 7 more than delivered for the hype that I had on it, and delivered one of the most magical gaming experiences of all time. I have quite a history of trying to get my hands on this game. I didn't seriously start wanting it until I had seen Advent Children, and they had a retrospective of the story in the menu, that my longing for this game begun. I had already played 8, 10 and probably even dabbled in 12 before I got a chance to play this. And as crazy as it might sound, it's the whole reason I ever wanted a PlayStation 3. To be able to download this from the PS1 classics. But I had no way. My parents didn't trust giving me their credit card info so my friend could order it online. It's something I can definitely understand and appreciate a lot more now that I'm older, of course. My town has no gaming stores, and even back then we only had the one, and that only dealt in newer stuff. And my friend who said his mom could order it online was just being awkward about it all. It sucked. I wanted it bad. I would listen to the Advent Children version of One Winged Angel on my crappy phone. I'd play Crisis Core, watch Advent Children, and even get a little bit of a fix playing Kingdom Hearts. I even tried copying it from my brother's girlfriend's laptop to burnable CDs, thinking my PS2 could play them, and it might shock you to hear, it didn't. I did, however, get to experience some of the end game through my friend who only had the 3rd disc, and I had a PS1 demo that let you download save files onto your memory card. And when I found out I could get it on the PS3, that was my plan. But I wasn't able to get one that Christmas, and it was pretty devastating. But thankfully, in a massive silver lining, I was told I could get a PSP for Christmas, because at that time I played my brothers quite a bit. And a few days after Christmas, my brother took my PSP, connected it to his PS3, and downloaded Final Fantasy VII on it for me at long last. I played this non-stop up until the end. I didn't touch another game until then. And right at the final dungeon, my save file got stuck because of a portable save point, which I know very well I'm not alone in. And what you would think would be a big raging moment, I didn't care. I was very okay having an excuse to play this whole game again. And I did, pretty much right away. Definitely my longest history trying to get a game. But let's actually talk about the game itself. The story, if I even need to explain it. You are an ex-soldier turned mercenary, Cloud Strife. You team up with a group called Avalanche, led by Barrett, who wants to stop Shinra from sucking the lifeblood of the planet, which they use to power their state-of-the-art machinery and city. You will join up with a large cast of memorable and beloved characters to stop Shinra, and of course the most well-known villain in the franchise, Sephiroth, in a journey that will bring laughs, tears, and a lot of confusion for many. And of course, some of the most iconic characters in the entire series originate here. Cloud is one of the most famous video game characters of all time. Barrett is a hardcore man with a gun for an arm, but can be a big softie, especially when it comes to his daughter Marlene. Aerith can be a precious and fun, but also a very teasing flower girl. And Tifa, do I even need to say anything? Tifa is one of the most popular Final Fantasy girls out there, and her popularity endures strong to this day. And Sephiroth, again, do I even need to say a word? His look, his sword, his goals, and certain actions. Every aspect has made people love to hate him, and last as one is the most well-known and iconic Final Fantasy antagonist ever. The biggest shift to gameplay this time is the materia. Each weapon can equip a certain amount to give you magic, upgrades to stats, and the like. Sort of like relics from 6, but more of them can be equipped, and they do more. It's also the first game to introduce limit breaks, which are powerful attacks that you can occasionally use when the limit break meter fills up. And every character will have unique limit breaks. Cloud picks an attack and unleashes it, Tifa gets a little slot machine to use, Vincent transforms into a monster and just goes wild. And every character has multiple limit breaks, which can be unlocked in different ways too. Outside of battle, the variety of things you can do has went up dramatically. From the snowboarding or motorbike minigames, to doing CPR on a passed out girl or arm wrestling in the gold saucer. In that aspect, for the variety of little things to do, it is easily at the top. Graphically, it is obviously very dated by today's standards. It's the first game to go into 3D, and of course production stuff from when it was intended as an N64 game probably didn't help. For its time, it was an impressive jump from top-down sprites to this. And the FMVs are great too, not nearly as close to the quality of 8 or 9, but I think there's a charm to them. And the music, easily one of the greatest in both quality and quantity. The opening track is one of the most iconic in the franchise. Aerith's theme still chokes people up. The Sephiroth theme is hauntingly ominous. And of course, possibly the most well-known Final Fantasy song, One Winged Angel. Not only is it still remembered and beloved, but there's so many versions too. From the original to Advent Children's amazing version, and even Kingdom Hearts has its own version. I don't want to talk too long about it, especially when there's no need to for this one. It's obviously still going strong and people still absolutely adore it after 25 years. And the reaction to the remake, be it positive or negative, really proves how passionate people still are. It is one of the most beloved games in history, and easily one of the most important JRPGs in the world. And for me, the love for this game is 100% deserved and earned. And I cannot wait for more of the remake too, because my passion and love for this game is definitely just as strong. Number 2. Final Fantasy VIII. The penultimate entry for this list, and obviously the last one that can be a surprise, because there's only one left. Another big black sheep in the franchise. Final Fantasy VIII was not met with as much excitement or praise as 7 was. The main character, the more romance-heavy story, the junction system, people weren't quite as pumped. But for me, Final Fantasy VIII is probably one of the most defining games of my whole list. I grew up with it and played it before I could properly even read and had to ask my brother for help. It was always with me for as long as I can remember, and it is the game that is responsible for bringing me into what would go on to become my absolute favourite franchise of all time across all types of media and entertainment. So it might go without saying, but this is one of my most valued and cherished pieces of content out there. Now, anyone who has a lot of history of PS1 or 2 games knows this well. The discs don't go too well when they're scratched. So for the longest time, all I could do was play a bit of disc 1 and 4. 4 worked perfectly, 1 kind of worked sometimes. But in a cosmic stroke of luck, my brother's friend had the exact opposite problem. His disc 1, 2 and 3 all worked perfectly. The only one that didn't work was 4. So it all eventually worked out and I was able to finally play the game. Final Fantasy VIII stars our main character, Squall, a student in a kind of military boarding school with the goal of defeating the sorceress Idea, Ida, I have no clue. I've heard it pronounced so many different ways. I don't know, take your pick. It's well known to get a bit messy and complicated too, and like I said, heavily romantic between our main leads. Honestly, I'm not sure what else to say about the story without going too deep into spoilers, so I'll just jump right to the characters. Squall has been described as an edgy emo a lot, and I think this does a disservice. I don't think they'd call him that if he wore pink. Squall tries to keep people at a distance and not care, but it's a big defense mechanism based on childhood stuff, and he grows a ton throughout this story. His instructor Quistis, who has her stern, serious teacher mode, but also loves to tease Squall about his attitude too. Zell is one of my favourites. He's a fun, high-energy, spunky martial artist. Selphie is kind of the hyper-energized young girl for this game, who is a very new transfer student to the school. Rhinoa is the love interest who features heavily on the romance aspect that people seem to dislike, and is also part of a local resistance unit against the sorceress and the military. And Irvine, the cocky sniper who loves the ladies. And of course, Cypher, the really well-known rival for this game. His smug grin and taunts make him one of the most lovable to hate characters ever. Despite a smaller party choice, it's probably one of my hardest when it comes to choosing. I love having Squall, Zell and Rhinoa for story reasons and because I like the characters, but I also love using Irvine and Selphie. For different reasons, but we'll get to that soon. Even the side characters in this game might be my favourite. Sid is the headmaster in this iteration. Cypher's henchmen Raijin and Fujin are iconic fun weirdos. Even this random NPC makes me eternally happy. There are a few other characters too who occasionally will join your party, which I think is pretty cool. While the gameplay again is mostly similar, at least in how you play. While Final Fantasy VII introduces limit breaks, 8 really did some of my favourite things with them. I especially appreciate the more interactive ones. It's even a big part of how I pick my team. Squall uses his Renzoku Ken, which will do multiple attacks and get stronger if you press R1 at the right time to activate it, which is the closest his weapon gets to being a gun blade. It has a trigger for that. Zell has a button command thing like in a fighting game, and if you're fast enough with this can be used for a really long time to do crazy damage. I'm talking like 15 seconds. That only counts down when you're supposed to press the buttons, and you can press them in like half a second sometimes. This can go on forever. And Selphie's limit break is probably the most well known. You basically have a sliding selection of pretty much any spell in the game that can also be used multiple times. The two most well known are Rapture, which can eject the majority of enemies instantly, and The End, which is similar except one distinct difference. It can kill everything. Literally anything except for undead enemies. Strong enemies, dead. Bosses, dead. Super bosses or the final boss, it never fails. It is a legendary powerful move in the community. Also, this time limit breaks are done if your HP drops low enough you have a chance to use them, so it's a risk versus reward thing. Stronger attacks but more likely to die. Then there's a big part that is a hit or miss depending on the person, the junction system. Possibly one of the most controversial mechanics in the franchise. You will select a certain list of 4 moves, and you can expand that list with GFs, which are the summons in this game, but you can also equip magic to your moves, increasing their power or adding elements or status effects to every attack. You get magic in this game using the draw command, which sucks a certain amount of spells from an enemy, giving you either limited uses or to equip to your junction. A big part of the controversy is because of how hard it can be to get magic, and of course if you have it equipped to your item and then use that magic, you get a bit weaker. Not to mention the other big controversial thing about the gameplay, enemies scale with you when you level up. So leveling up is pretty much not advised too much in this game because the enemies get stronger, which a lot of people wouldn't know and can easily lead to some very, very difficult games. The Guardian Forces, or GFs, are your summons in this game, and they are by far my absolute favourite in the franchise. Nothing comes even remotely close. You can equip a few per party member, which lets you summon them of course, and this is where they are my favourite. The animations and scenes that take place when you summon them are absolutely amazing sights to behold, and I love seeing them play out. The PS1 era of summonings are just top notch, especially 8. But you can also learn new abilities through keeping them equipped. Depending on who you have equipped, you will get a certain amount of AP at the end of a battle, which can level them up to learn stat boosts or new commands like mugging. And it easily adds a lot to do in this game. It also has my second favourite Final Fantasy minigame, the Triple Triad. I won't go into the ins and outs of it, but it's a card game where you can challenge a lot of people across the world, trying to flip their cards based on the higher number. If you win, you take one of your opponent's cards. If you lose, they take one of yours. There are many alternate rules to unlock and spread in various ways too, and I think this card game is insanely addicting. And I know I'm definitely not alone, especially considering that it made it into Final Fantasy XIV as well. This game also has some of my favourite graphics, I think. It's crazy that this came out only 2 years after 7, like just about. They must have really gotten more used to this hardware. And yes, the game itself looks nice and much more impressive, and the environments are amazing and varied, but the real show stealer are the FMVs, or full motion video. These hold up even now. They still look amazing. When I first played this back in the day, these were half of the reward for continuing to play. Especially the opening scene. When you're on the way to Dalit. Quiz is coming out with a fucking minigun to save your ass. It is easily my favourite game in terms of cutscenes, especially in terms of these FMVs. I think out of all the Final Fantasy games, this one definitely also holds my favourite soundtrack. Liberi Fatali is an epic intro for the game. The Balam Garden theme never leaves me for long. Eyes on Me is even pretty great, even if a lot of people hate where it's used.
Never sang my songs on the stage on my own.
The open world theme is unbelievably catchy. There's way too many to even begin to start listing them, and it never lets up with how amazing it is. It also has my favourite method of transportation ever. You have cars, the coolest airship probably in the franchise, and one more that I'm not going to spoil just in case, but if you've played the game, you probably know what I'm talking about when I talk about the best method of transportation ever. So, while not everybody's cup of tea, especially coming out right after 7, which was the biggest thing ever, I think that probably did hurt this game, but for me, this game has an effect and draw on me that will probably never die. It's a giant 4-disc long journey that has, without any doubt, shaped my gaming life in more ways than I could ever express. and it is, without any doubt, one of my most cherished experiences to have experienced this journey. Number 1. Final Fantasy X. My favourite Final Fantasy game, my favourite game in my favourite franchise, and my absolute favourite game of all time. This was the first entry on the PS2, and the first to introduce voice acting. I still remember my brother came home one day and told me he got the new Final Fantasy. And while I loved 8, and while I had dabbled a tiny bit in 7 and 9, it didn't exactly mean much to me. I went in to watch, but I didn't exactly jump for joy or anything. Little did I know, this game would hit me and impact me in a way that nothing else could. I watched him play, I got to play, I watched my other older brother play. We all loved it. And that is definitely a big part of why I love this game so much and its impact on me. It's one of the only games I can possibly think of that me and all 3 of my older brothers absolutely loved. There's definitely games we all like and there's some overlap between what we love, but nothing quite like this. And like I said already, it's hard not to be more drawn in when a game has such high sentimental value, on top of loving the experience itself. But enough of that, let's actually talk about the game a bit. You play as Tidus, officially called Tidus, but I've always called him Tidus, so that's what I'm sticking with. He tells you his story in flashback. Tidus is the star player of the Xanark and Abes, a famous skilled blitzball team. What's blitzball? Well, it's an underwater sport. It's kind of like a mix between soccer and football. Don't worry, we will get to that soon. While in the middle of a match and being the star of the show, his city is attacked by a giant whale-looking creature who his mysterious friend Auron informs him they call Sin. Tidus is sucked away and is taken to the world of Spira, where the story will take place. He joins the summoner Yuna and her guardians on a pilgrimage designed to give her the ability to defeat Sin and bring about the calm for the people of this world. The story takes a lot of twists and turns and delivers my favourite journey of all time. With great and iconic voice acting, stunning visuals, and easily some of my favourite moments in gaming history. Our main character Tidus is the one it mainly focuses on as he tells the audience his story and thoughts. Some people find him grating, but I love him to this day. He is loud and often says what he's thinking when people don't want him to. Sometimes just because he wants to say it, sometimes because he doesn't know not to, not understanding all the customs of this world. Yuna is what you can easily consider a dual main character. She is a kind and caring person who devotes herself to becoming a summoner to defeat Sin. She tries to keep smiling no matter what, knowing the weight of the fact that she is a beacon of hope for the people of Spira. Riku is the ball of energy for this game, who saves you when you end up stranded in Spira. She is a peppy, spunky girl and a member of the race of Albed, who were considered heathens of the world for their use of forbidden machines called Machina. You got Wakka, and I fucking love Wakka. He's easily one of my favourite fictional characters ever. He is the captain of the blitzball team, the Besaid Aurochs, the worst team in the world apparently, and he is also a guardian of Yuna. But he wants to have one last game in the tournament to go out with a bang before retiring to be a guardian full time. He has a hate for the Albed, which stems from some childhood trauma and his religious upbringing. I already briefly mentioned Auron. He is pretty much the fan favourite loved character. He's a mysterious man you knew from Xanarkand before he got sucked away. A man of pretty few words, basically your stoic, strong, badass character. And while I like some other characters more, I can definitely see why he is such an unbelievably loved character. You got Kimahri, who is a Ronzo, which is kind of like a big blue cat. He is another one of Yuna's guardians who she has known since she was very, very young. Comes off of a gruff, silent character, but you know right from the start he cares about her more than pretty much anything. He also clearly has some stuff going on with his broken horn, when a few other Ronzo you meet throughout the game kind of bully him for it. Of course, another fan favourite for a lot of different reasons is Lulu. She's not happy about Titus being involved. She has no room for any bullshit going on. But again, she cares about Yuna more than anything. And in a lot of ways I think she is one of the most interesting characters and has a ton of fascinating moments throughout the game. And pretty much every side character that you meet throughout this game is insanely memorable. Characters like Owaka.
Owaka the 23rd, merchant extraordinaire.
You got Titus's father, Jecht, who he hates a lot, and through flashbacks you would easily see why.
You with a woman? You can't even catch a ball!
The two other Ronzos I mentioned, who bully Chimera a bit, are very memorable. There's too many to even go over here. Again, it being my most played Final Fantasy game probably helps with me remembering that, but I won't sit here and list off characters for 10 minutes, don't worry. And I just have to say, the world that this game takes place on is easily my favourite out of all the games. Spira is a fascinating, colourful and beautiful world. A lot of the game is kind of island and water themed, and is definitely one of my favourite worlds in any game ever. Combat wise, it's gone back to the older Final Fantasy style kind of, where it's completely turn based. No ATB gauge here, you just take your time. You can also switch between characters in battle because you have 7 at any given time, but you can switch them out at any time. And a lot of the battles have kind of certain enemies, and they all have their specific strengths and weaknesses, which a lot of the enemies will be vulnerable to. Wakka is good against flying enemies, Lulu is the black mage so she can deal with more damage resistant enemies, Auron is like the tank who can take out the more defensive enemies, and Yuna is the summoner, so she'll take out the big ones. You also have a thing on the right to show the enemy order and what will happen, which has a ton of crazy math in it, but I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. There's a channel called DansGo8 who's done a very detailed video on that went way over my head, so if you want to know more about this system, check that out. And leveling up in this game, like I already mentioned before, is done by a sphere grid. There's no levels, you'll beat the enemy. When you finish a battle, you might get a sphere level, which you can move along this giant grid and upload stats one at a time. You'll move along and use a sphere to unlock 2+ strength, or you might get more magic or abilities throughout this, and it is easily my favourite leveling system in the series. It also gives you a ton of variety, especially in the expert sphere grid, because you can pretty much go in any direction you want, and it makes every playthrough a little bit different if you want it to be. But since we're talking about the gameplay, let's get into it. Blitzball. Blitzball is not just a sport in this world, you can actually play it. And when I said Triple Triad is my second favourite, this is number one. I'm gonna be honest here, I've hit a bit of a roadblock because I'm not even sure how to begin to describe this to somebody who's never played it. Basically, it mixes RPG with the soccer style, football style of it. You would have a certain amount of shoot, and if that number is higher than the block of the enemy goalkeeper, you can score. If not, they will catch it. They will have attack and endurance, because when you get caught by an opponent, they can attack you. That's how they get the ball from you. They just kick the shit out of you. You can choose how many will attack you and how many will stop the ball. Boy, this must be a bunch of nonsense to somebody who's never played it. I barely know what I'm talking about. But there's a lot of small mechanics. Some you definitely need to know, some that you don't. Some more intricate than others. Some people absolutely hate Blitzball. It is one of my favourite things ever. You unlock a piece of equipment for some post-game stuff for Wakka, and you can get it but in 2 different ways. One, by winning this in a league match, which is just a few games. Option 2, win 100 games of Blitzball. Every time I've ever done it, it's from the 100 games of Blitzball, because that's how much I adore it. You can play any time after your first game at save spheres, and many times I have put more time into Blitzball at some stages of this game than the actual main story. I get so sucked into this, I'll have so many games in a row. I'll play it pretty much every time I can. It is easily my favourite side game in anything. And for anyone else who loves it as much as I do, you know where I'm coming from. They did it in 10.2 as well, but I have no idea what's going on with it. I could never figure it out. As you journey throughout your pilgrimage, you will do... At every temple, you will get a new summon after going through a cloister of trials, which is like a puzzle where you carry one sphere at a time, put it somewhere else, have something happen, try to figure it out. I feel like you either love it or hate it. Funny enough, I never hear people talking about it, so I feel like they just repress it. Probably no surprise I enjoy them, but they probably are the lowest points of the game, even if they are fun. And when you get a new summon, you got new ones like Valifor, but you also have their typical returning ones like Bahamut or Ifrit. And in this game, they don't just come out and have an attack. You summon them, and then you can control them, which I think is a really cool touch. And if you do miss that whole big epic move from a summon, they do that too. With what I'll get into now, with their overdrives. Every character has an overdrive, which is the limit break of this game. When your bar fills up, which can be filled up in a variety of ways depending on what you choose. Some commands will have it fill up with every turn, sometimes depending on how much damage you take, to fit your playstyle. I don't know if I already said this for 8, but it's between 8 and 10 definitely for what my favourite one is in how it handles it. Tidus has a bar go from left to right and you have to press it at the right time to get a more powerful move. Wakka has the slot machine. With Lulu, she does a big magical flurry where you have to rotate the right stick as many times as you can. It's really awkward but fun. Riku does mixing, where she mixes 2 items together to do a powerful attack or heal or something like that. Auron has a kind of a fighting game move, you have to press 8 buttons in the right order quick enough. Kimahri learns enemy moves, he's like the blue mage of this game, where he gets to use an enemy attack for his overdrive, and Yuna can do a grand summon, which immediately summons a summon with their overdrive full. And all of the summons overdrives are just a big powerful move, with a cool animation to play out as it would be if it was just done in Final Fantasy 7 or 8 or 9. There's also a bunch of other weird little gameplay things there. Some are great, some are not. Things like the Chocobo training as haunted people. It's fun, but fucking hard. And of course some of the most notorious are the butterfly catching and the lightning dodges. If you press X at the right time after seeing a flash to get something for Lulu, you have to dodge 200 of these in a row, not one fail. Which is absolutely insane. There's an exploit you can do to have it come out at the right spot every time you go there, and it still takes roughly half an hour to do. I can't imagine doing this legit. If you have done it legit, with no exploits, I don't know if I should applaud you or get you help. Also, depending on which version you played back in the day, the internationally European version had a lot more extra content from the US version, such as optional super bosses with millions of HP, and a lot more of a reason to go for post-game stuff. I honestly pity anyone who only had to play the original version because this is so much better and adds hundreds of hours to the game. I guess we'll end this off, the final entry, with the music. Some of Final Fantasy's best tracks definitely come from this game, and the soundtrack is phenomenal. Right from the opening, To Zanarkand is one of the most famous pieces of music and definitely one of the most beautiful. Otherworld plays close to the opening and it is unbelievably badass piece of music. I mean, this is fun. This is fun, amazing shit going on. How can you not love hearing that? The Hymn of the Fate is just hauntingly amazing.
Summoners go on a pilgrimage to pray at every temple in Spira. Guardians protect them.
I find myself just singing this every once in a while out of absolute nowhere. And this music keeps up throughout. Everywhere is distinct and just a joy to listen to, no matter where you are in the game. And just a quick shout out to 10-2, which is the sequel. I kind of have a guilty pleasure for What Can I Do For You. I can't, I don't know, it's just so dumb, I love it. Maybe I'll talk more about that someday, maybe, who knows. And, yeah, and that's just a few of the reasons why Final Fantasy X is my favourite ever. My favourite Final Fantasy, my favourite game ever. I have put like 10 different save files into this since I was a child that have over 200 hours in it. I have the Platinum Trophy on PS3. And I'm definitely going to play it again soon. I really want to play it again. I can't praise this game enough, and I think it definitely had a big impact on me in a lot of ways too. It's my favourite piece of media or entertainment in the world. I will probably buy it pretty much every time it comes out. I don't think anything will ever touch this, just It's an amazing game. It's addicting as hell to play. No matter how many times I go back to it or even watch a let's play of it or something, I never get sick of it. And like I already mentioned, massive sentimental value. Even when I had my PS3 version, my brother used to borrow it every once in a while too, because it's just, we all love it, and that is why it means so much to me as well. How can you beat a game you absolutely adore, that some of the closest people in your life love too? I don't think you can. I'm honestly disappointed. Even after like 200+ hours playing the story to get, or the game to get the platinum trophy, I was so disappointed that the PlayStation 4 version had the same trophy list, because I would have done it again. Probably by now. And that was only like 2 years ago. And that is why it is number one and above everything else.
Listen to my story. This may be our last chance.
And yeah, I think we're done. Oh, I started this off thinking I would be happy if I can get 2 minutes out of every game, just to have like a 30-minute video. I was afraid it'd be too short. I have 11 days to fucking edit this thing. This is gonna be a nightmare. This is easily my most massive thing. Yes, I'm just gonna shut the fuck up. What am I to? Obviously, Final Fantasy as a franchise has been going strong with ups and downs, but it's still such a massive thing after 35 years. How many things can say that? It has absolutely no sign of stopping anytime soon, with the 7 Remake Part 2 on its way, 16 coming out next year. I'll probably add it in or put it on screen to show the date if it's announced at the Game Awards like the rumours say. And even remasters of games from like 30 years ago still selling and still getting remasters, with great results sometimes. And no matter how many franchises might fall away, this is one where I'm always excited for a new release. I cannot wait to see what they do next, whether it be the new games, their weird spin-offs, or more remakes. I can't wait to see where 16 will rank on this list. I might even continue on my journey of just playing through them in order to see how they upgrade every time. Like I said, I had to play through the first 6 to make this video, while 7, 8, 9, 10 and 12 or less needed to play because of my familiarity with them. And this has definitely opened the door to more games and sequels I want to play too. Particularly Final Fantasy IV The After Years, and of course it's in the future while I'm recording this, but the Crisis Core remaster / remake has just come out and I can't wait to play that. And I'm hoping by the time this comes out I'm having a blast with it. Anyway, that's enough rambling. Happy birthday to my favourite franchise of anything, happy 35th. I hope they celebrate it well, which I didn't even think about. They might do something for the actual anniversary itself. I really hope they do. That'd be great. And of course, let me know what your favourites are. Give me your list if you want. Tell me your favourites. Especially if it has some story behind or like sentimental meaning. That's the stuff I love hearing the most. The games that really struck you hard. Are you excited for 16 like I am? Is it going to be the reason you get a PS5? Maybe I'll do something like this in the future with just the side games, but that's obviously a much bigger thing. It's been on way too long. This is like an hour and a half, I imagine, at this point. Thank you for watching if you did. If you made it this far, I can't thank you enough for that. See you for the next one, and thanks for watching this overly long thing. Once again, happy birthday.